All right. Good morning, Doug. I want to talk to you today just about a lot of random things that are going on, just to get your thoughts on it, because I don't know. It seems to me there's a lot of different data points that point to chaos, but I don't really. I just want to get your thoughts on it. And I think the biggest thing that keeps jumping to my mind, I see in the headlines, is things relating to shortages. And I don't know. Like, how do you? So some of the data points, for instance, there's 4.3 last month. There were 4.3 million people that quit their jobs in the U.S., which is weird because we'd already been low, in the number of people that already were out and on these unemployment benefits. But those are all gone now. But we had 4.3 million people quit. 524,000 people have left healthcare since February of 2020. That's pretty shocking.
That's an extraordinarily large number of people to leave a particular business.
Oh, what do they do after that? I mean, what are they doing? I don't know.
I don't know. But we don't know how that statistic is put together. I was thinking about this a little bit when you mentioned it earlier today. And would that include massage therapists? Because
it does include them, but it does include people who work in long-term care facilities like, old folks' homes and that kind of thing. It includes those people.
Where do they go? What are they doing? And nobody's getting free money from the government to the degree they were before.
Not the extraordinary extra benefits from the feds. No, that's not happening anymore.
Nor the rent forgiveness and.
Nope, foreclosures are spiking now. So what are people doing? People obviously they have to have some. They have to eat. They have to put a roof over their head. They have to do those things. But I don't know. There's people have talked about part of this is the Great Resignation. And that it's happening globally where people are just, quitting their jobs.
Well, we are at a disadvantage here out on the Campo in Uruguay, where this stuff is not happening, at least not at the moment. It'd be nice if some listener of ours that has his boots on the ground, as they say, could tell us what's happening. It would be nice if somebody would actually talk to one of these people that has quit their job as a medical person or is being kicked out of his apartment. But I doubt that any of our listeners would be among those that need rent forbearance or mortgage forbearance, or frankly would even have a friend that is in that position. But it would be nice if somebody would tell us.
Well, I can tell you my sister was in healthcare and she quit last month.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because she quit because of vaccination, though. She'd already taken the vaccination. She got 2, and then there were talk of the third one, and she's just like, screw this. Like, why am I even doing this? This job sucks.
Yeah, enough is enough.
So after like a decade, she just quit.
Well, I always used to believe you should change your job every 5 years, just on general principles, so you can get out of a rut that you're in.
Yeah.
But that's hard to do because you've got time and grade and so forth. But as a general principle, I think it's a good idea to keep moving and not be known as just that one thing in your life.
You want to be multidimensional for sure.
Yes, exactly.
But the question, the thing is, I'm trying to figure out is what is the catalyst that's driving this activity? Because it does seem to be really strange. I mean, there was a time where, of course, during when all these federal benefits were available, that you were like an idiot to go to work because you could make just as much money not working. Many cases, more than you would by not working. So I could kind of see the economic justification for it. But now there's something different that's happening, something in the zeitgeist that's different, that's driving this, and I don't know what it is. I just can't even. If it's not the rapture, and these people aren't just disappearing, one by one. Or it's not, my other theory was that, in the simulation theory that there's all these NPCs, and so NPCs are just being zapped away, and no one notices or says they're missing because they're NPCs.
Yeah, exactly. They were really nothing but statistics before, and now they're a different kind of statistic after.
Exactly. So other than that, it's really hard to define. But the idea of the only other possibility I can think of, which this is much more likely, I guess, is that people realize there's something wrong and they're just opting out of the game that they probably thought was bullshit already anyway. You know what I mean? These low-paying jobs especially?
Well, you and I certainly see that there's something wrong. Something is in the air at this point. And That's why we wound up down here in sunny Uruguay.
Earlier than expected, right? Because you'd usually come down another 2 months from now.
Yeah, I usually get down here when the temporada, as they call it, the season starts, when all the tourists come from across the Rio del Plata. But yeah, anything could explode in the U.S. now at this point. I don't know what it would be, where it would come from, but you can just smell these things sometimes.
What do they call it? A conflagration, or what is it? A whole bunch of different things.
Yeah, it's a conflagration. Well, I guess we'll see. But I've said for years, whatever happens, I'd rather watch it, and something's going to happen. I'd rather watch it on my wide screen from a quiet location than out my front window. So.
Well, I agree with that, and I think that, so just one more thing with the shortages that's I think worth to talk about is that I don't know if you know, and apparently Greta has not gotten the memo yet, but there's shortages of CO2 right now.
How dare you?
But seriously though, there's actual shortages. So that people apparently use CO2, in the slaughtering of animals, and you also use it for food packaging and all kinds of other things apparently. And it strangely enough is a byproduct in the manufacture of fertilizer. And because there's a shortage of natural gas, or at least the prices have gotten to such a point they've shut down fertilizer production in many places, then the knock-on effects is that there's a shortage actually of CO2. So I think we could solve climate change really quickly without having to do anything else.
I think it all boils down to politics, and one indication of that is natural gas prices in Europe are triple what they are here in the U.S. And when there's an arbitrage opportunity that big, it tells you that there's some regulation that's at work. Otherwise, producers and arbitrageurs would take advantage of it. So but we don't know. The reporting is absolutely terrible everywhere.
It is. The thing is that it worries me about this, the shortages of CO2, and then because there's the lack of fertilizer production. Like that, something in the last decade has happened, or maybe the last 20 years, where our food prices are so connected to the fuel prices. And maybe it's always been this way, and I just wasn't aware of it, but if food is going to become dramatically more expensive, yields are going to drop, we're going to have real problems if fertilizer production falls off a cliff, right? I mean, isn't that how it works today?
Sure. Ammonia fertilizer is primarily made from natural gas. Okay. So that's part of it. But natural gas prices right now in the United States are a little bit on the high side of where they usually fluctuate, but within a normal range. So
there shouldn't be any problems in the U.S. with any of that.
You wouldn't think so, except for the fact that carbon dioxide, or carbon in particular, is the enemy element. So you think that we'd be awash in it since they say it's changing the world's climate.
Yeah, I know. Okay, well, we talked a couple of times in our podcast here about Haiti, because we know, I mean, you spent some time there, and the country it's a weird country to be where it is, and it has with all the problems it has. And obviously we have all the Haitians that were under the bridge in Texas not long ago, and apparently there's a caravan of more that are making their way up from South America.
And where did all those Haitians that were under the bridge, where did they go? Were they shipped back to Haiti, or did something else happen to them?
It could be the rapture again. I think the rapture might be the answer to all these questions.
Yeah, you hear about these things, and then the news cycle drives on. It's like pulling Gibran's hand, having written, the hand moves on, and that's the last you ever hear of it.
Yeah, it's bizarre. But so there's a bunch of missionaries that were kidnapped and are being held for ransom in Haiti right now.
That's right. Kidnapping is a major industry in Haiti at this point, and it has been a growing industry for years. As I pointed out, when I first went to Haiti a long time ago, it was absolutely one of the safest countries in the world. Absolutely. If you were a tourist, nothing was going to happen to you, and that's a fact under any circumstances. But now you're meat on the hoof for the people that can capture you and ransom you. So 17 missionaries at once, that's pretty bold. Where are they being held, and what will be done about it? Especially if, it's, we just don't know. But if you're in a place like Haiti, that's a pretty good business as to
It's one of the few businesses actually that
how else are you going to generate? There's no other way that the Haitians, who don't produce anything, there's no agriculture in that country. I mean, that's impossible. If you're a farmer that grows things, starving people are going to steal the stuff out of your field. It makes it very hard. It's very hard to do anything productive down there because there's no law, there's no enforcement against criminals. So it's a huge problem. So what is going to happen? Maybe the U.S. will make it the 51st state.
Well, lawlessness seems to be on the rise everywhere, doesn't it? I mean, we saw the largest 30% increase in murders in the U.S. last year. We see these kidnappings in Haiti, and I don't know if that'll turn into something bigger. I guess maybe it'll scare the missionaries away. Maybe they should stay out of Haiti for a while. But what do you think? I mean, last time we talked about the big trends, the things that thought would happen, and one of mine was that I thought that was talking about lawlessness being on the rise, talking about that, it was the importation of the third world to the U.S. Is going to cause crime rates to continue to go up. But it seems like what happens to everywhere else where these people are coming from? It seems like crime rates there must be off the charts in order to drive them out.
Yeah, on the one hand, enterprising criminals will come to the U.S. because it's richer pickings. But, usually when people emigrate, it's the best and brightest that have the get up and go to leave and get out of the shithole. So what are the consequences of Haitian immigration going to be? Well, from the point of view of the people that stay there, it's very good because then the Haitians that have to get up and go and come to the U.S. Get a job, typically, and then they send remittances back to Haiti. So that's what usually happens. It's a good thing. But, last night we watched a movie, one of my favorites, Dark of the Sun, about the Congo in the early 60s. And I thought it was quite a good movie. I hadn't seen it, since it was current in the theaters in 1966. And I'm thinking, there's no reason why Haiti couldn't be just like the Congo in the early 60s with, the scenes of what happened to when the rebels, giving rebels a bad name, I've got to say, took over and really weird things happened to the people that got caught by them.
Yeah.
It could happen.
Weird as in terrible. Terrible things happened.
Yeah, exactly. It was one of the better done scenes in the movies where it showed what the Simbas did to the missionaries they captured. It was pretty graphic.
Pretty graphic. Great movie though. It was interesting. I mean, we talked a little bit earlier about that whole era where mercenaries were kind of all over Africa, and you were telling me about some person who worked for the UN, something they told you.
Yeah, in college, one of my professors at Georgetown, I probably had a total of, I'll say 5 or 6 hours in the 4 years of classes that I took at Georgetown that were worthwhile and memorable. And one of them was in a government-related class, and Jean Kirkpatrick was the professor, and she was later appointed the U.S. ambassador to the UN and a bunch of other government positions. She was very well known in the 80s, I guess. So anyway, I was sitting there in class, and she was and this was in 1966 when stuff was going on in the Congo, and she said, yes, there are a lot of countries in Africa where couple of white mercenaries can form an army and take over a country. And I was sitting next to my friend Vince. We looked over at each other and, hey, what are you doing this summer?
Exactly. Harder to do that today, though.
No, very hard. These African armies have, thanks to U.S. and Soviet training, have become much more professional and much better armed. And, the hand of fate, having written, has moved on.
Has moved on. Well, on the topic of the Haitian missionaries, or the missionaries in Haiti being captured, apparently, you told me, and I was shocked by this statistic, and of course we don't know if it's true, but it seems like it might be, that 135 NGO workers or other do-gooders in the country trying to make it better in Colombia have been killed since the start of the year.
Yes, I get a daily blog that covers events in Latin America. And of course, the events that are covered are usually the outrageous and scandalous ones. Yeah. And I pointed that out, and I said, that's a lot of murders just in principle anywhere. But NGO workers alone, just to count 135, that's a lot. 2 just this last weekend. So I guess Colombia is still a place you've got to kind of watch your back.
Yeah, I mean, the reason that stood out to me when you mentioned it was just the fact that a lot of people I know live in Colombia. They live in Medellin, and they like it, and it has a lot of redeeming qualities. But it just seems it has the peace is just seems like a thin veneer. I mean, it was not long ago that all the narco problems were there and lots of people getting killed, and it just seems like that it's still there.
Yeah, and this stuff started really after World War II, when the so-called liberals and so-called conservatives were battling each other. And what happened in those days is the liberals would ride into town, and if you were a conservative, they'd kill you. And then later, when the conservatives regained, if you were still alive, you were obviously a liberal, so they'd kill you too. So that kind of set a bad tradition up in Colombia.
Yeah, and I love Colombia. It's lots of great things about it, but boy, yeah, it does make me, we have mutual friends who live there, and I don't know, and I think a lot of people are looking for a place to escape to now, and I just think that could be out of the frying pan into the fire. Perhaps.
Could be, because in these Latin American countries, in any of them, things can change on a dime.
Including this one.
Even backward, peaceful, quiet Uruguay, things could change radically with the next election or God knows what. So there's really no place you can run and hide. So what are the possibilities that seem doable in the Western Hemisphere at this point? And we were talking earlier, and it seems like parts of Mexico seem okay at the moment, and which is surprising, the land of the Frito Bandito after all.
Yeah.
And Costa Rica, which has always been the most
peaceful,
country of, one reason for that is that there were no resources. There was no gold, there was nothing there, so they developed different traditions, and you could basically steal all the stuff from the Indians and set yourself up, so.
Well, and here, those are the 3 that we talked about.
Pretty much, yeah,
and pretty much. Some of the things, I did a short little video with Max, we were just walking around imitating Berwick to a degree, not as funny, and my dog is not nearly as cute, but we did it. And we talked about why Uruguay, and there were a number of reasons I went through in that, but, and people responding to it was interesting, because a couple people who are in Canada, they're like, I missed the window, and now they're stuck. They're stuck.
It does seem that way, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's what they think so. They think they're stuck. They think there's no way for them to get out now. And I wonder, I really think in general, it's hard to know where to go and what to do. It's complicated, and it's also very difficult to move yourself and especially your family. It's very hard to do any of this stuff. But I do think that the window of opportunity is closing, so people are seriously considering anything like that. They probably should consider it very quickly.
You can still transfer money out of the country.
Yeah.
That's still possible. But for Americans, it's possible, but it's not practical because where are you going to send it to? You've got to open an account up where the money will go. But it's almost impossible as a practical matter, and I'm telling you because I know these things from personal experience, for an American to open up, nobody wants to take your account. It's not illegal, but nobody wants an account from an American. It's more trouble than it's worth.
Yep.
So you can still get your money out legally, but it's very hard. And if you're a Canadian or an Australian or a Kiwi, you can't get your physical body out.
Well, there still are loopholes. You can, in a way. I mean, I was told you about an email exchange I had this morning with Chris McIntosh. We've talked about Chris's newsletter on this before. And he's in New Zealand and leaving, so he's expecting to be able to get out. But I think it's difficult, and they can deny you the ability to leave, and it could get a lot worse from here. So
and it's much more expensive than it used to be.
Yeah.
To ship a trailer with your goods is about 3 times more expensive than it was only a year ago.
And it takes a lot longer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things you can do to move your money, though, if you're an American, is land bank it. Like that's something. If you have some cash, then you can put it into productive, real estate assets, if that's possible to do. Like that's something you could do to get it out of the country. But you're right. They don't want you as banking customers.
No, they don't. But everybody needs a crib in a second country because anything can change anywhere.
Yep. You know what I've talked, so some people have told me they're worried about doing that, like pulling the trigger on going anywhere at this point. And I understand if you're rushing things, you could make a terrible mistake. But, what I suggested to someone recently is, what if you thought of it all as, especially if someone's imagining, this is the way I kind of thought of worst case scenario with us coming to Uruguay. If we were coming here, we didn't like it. Well, we're basically having a couple month adventure during the best months of the year down here where this is a really happening place. So, through the northern winter, avoiding the winter and coming down, checking it out, see if we can get some things happening that we enjoy and, stay on after that, assuming we can. But you don't have to necessarily make the full commitment of, I'm going to live there forever for the rest of my life or anything like that. But I think if your window to test the waters on a new place, I think is closing.
I think so too. And just the ability of the average guy to investigate things, it's much harder than it used to be. I mean, look, it once was that you could, put on a backpack and you could hitchhike anywhere or take planes anywhere. All you needed was a passport, and that's all you needed, quite frankly. But now it's, it's inconvenient. It's hard to get into countries, maybe impossible to some countries. Mm-hmm. And even traveling within the country, you don't know what kind of regulations they're going to have. It's a different world than it used to be.
It is, and it seems like it's hard to know what things will look like in 6 months. And it's possible that maybe this blows over and things sort of start to revert back to the mean and improve. It's possible. I don't think so. But I think the economic pain is just starting, and that's the real pain. That's the real pain. So I think that's still coming. But I do think for those of you who are like waiting to pull the trigger to even really explore your options, and a lot of it that's because you're afraid and you don't know what the right answer is, and I totally understand that. But I think you got to take advantage of the time over this winter to test the waters, to try if you maybe, go on an extended vacation to Mexico, or, go on an extended vacation here, or Costa Rica, or somewhere else where you think might be a good option for you based upon, what you know about the place.
And those, incidentally, are probably the 3 best options in the Western Hemisphere.
I think so.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. There was something else you said you had from notes from last night that you wanted to bring up.
Yes. The other thing I was going to mention was that I enjoy watching Mark Dice's video show.
Yeah.
It's always funny when he goes and does his man in the street thing. Yeah. So last night he's standing on the beach in Venice, and he's got a T-shirt on that says "Save the Triceratops." And there's a picture of a Triceratops. I mean, anybody that's seen Jurassic Park, I presume has seen a Triceratops, even if you're not a dinosaur aficionado. So he interviews about 10 people, and he says, I'm here to save the Triceratops. You may not be aware, but Ted Nugent is out hunting these fine animals for sport, killing them, not even for meat, for sport. He romances this different ways with different people. And, all these people are signing his petition. I mean, they can see the Triceratops that's right on his face. So this shows how abysmally ignorant the average American is.
Oh, Lord. Yeah. Well, I think that's a good sign that you need to get away from people like that.
Yes, you do.
Because when stuff gets crazy, those stupid people they're going to be problematic.
Not only that, not only are they dangerous, but it's been said accurately that you're kind of the sum total of the three closest people that you hang around with.
Yeah.
And if they're all stupid, degenerate idiots, well, chances are you will be too.
That's a good reason. All right. Okay. Well, one other thing I wanted I want to get your thoughts on inflation, just to wrap this up, because something that I was dumb about and didn't really understand the technical definition of inflation. And so people talk about inflation in terms of prices going up, but that's not. So maybe if you could explain what inflation actually is, and if inflation is transitory, given what the actual definition is, that would mean that the Fed would have to take action to, well, I'll get to that in a second, I guess. So what's the real definition of inflation?
It's an increase in the money supply above the increase in real goods and services. So most people, however, think inflation is price rises, but that is a consequence of inflation. It is not inflation itself. It is not the cause of inflation, what inflation actually is. It's a rise in the money supply.
So the only way to stop inflation is to reduce the money supply.
It's the only way it can be done. But I'm afraid that if the Fed stops inflation, it's likely to be an accident, to start with, and it will occur via a catastrophic deflation. And how would a catastrophic deflation occur? With a stock market collapse where stock market loses $10 trillion of value. Well, that's basically $10 trillion that's vanished. A bond market collapse. You used to have $10,000 in your bond. The bond isn't payable anymore. Where did $10,000 go? It was deflated. It's not there. That money's not there to bid for goods and services anymore. So in a world where there's so much debt, and in a world where we have a stock market bubble and a bubble in almost everything, a deflation is very possible, right? Still, even today.
Well, aren't there something like several quadrillions of derivatives? Some like crazy enormous number on top of all of that real stuff that's traded.
Exactly. Speculative medium. It's hard to see how they can even keep track of all these things, quite frankly. God forbid some kind of a really nasty computer virus hits the financial world, and people don't have stock certificates anymore. I mean, I guess you can still get them, but it's unusual these days. So it would be easy for your account at your bank or brokerage firm to disappear, and it wouldn't be their fault. It's a virus that...
Right. Bank error not in your favor.
Exactly. What happened to all my assets? Well, the problem is they aren't even paper assets. They were just digital assets.
Right.
So this is all the more reason why you ought to own a lot of physical gold and silver coins.
Yeah. And maybe productive land, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so the only way that inflation could not be transitory is if the Fed is willing to reduce the money supply. And by reducing the money supply, that would cause, most likely, a catastrophic collapse of assets.
At this point, because you've got to service all that debt. And the same thing could happen when interest rates go up. People that can, in a heavily indebted world, people that can crack the nut at 2% interest rates cannot do so at 6 or 10% or 12 or, like back in the early 80s, 18% interest rates. They go bust. But actually, that's the best thing that can happen, because all the real wealth in the world will still exist. It's just going to change ownership.
Well, that might be Klaus's idea with this whole thing, though.
Well,
Change ownership to the banks.
I presume Klaus figures he's going to be a net beneficiary of it.
Yeah.
And as well connected as he is politically, I don't doubt that he's right.
All right. Well, unless you have anything else to add, I think we'll leave it here for today.
Yeah, maybe we'll find a happy topic to talk about tomorrow.
We could do some more movie reviews. Those are fun. It's more fun to talk about movies.
Everybody loves movie reviews. And I wonder if anybody out there that's listened to this has actually even heard of the movie Dark of the Sun with Rod Taylor and Jim Brown.
If you haven't, encourage you to watch it. Jim Brown is awesome in it, by the way.
Yeah,
He was great in it.
He's very good. He was kind of like the nice O.J. Simpson of his era.
Exactly. And he's a better actor. Better
Yeah.
actor than O.J. was. O.J.
Although I enjoyed O.J. in those Naked Gun movies.
when he kept getting thrown off the balcony at the baseball stadium and all. Yeah. Those were hilarious movies. I loved them. Okay, we'll leave it there for now. Thank you very much, Doug. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt.